Welcome to the Military Wire with Mike Schindler. This is the podcast where we interview America's most elite men and women who have served this country. We share their stories of overcoming, their proven lessons in leadership, and their journey to finding mission and purpose. Today, we've got retired U.S. Army General William Ward, the first commander of AFRICOM. This was a unified combatant command focused primarily on mitigating terrorist attacks and other security issues. They were disrupting narcotics activity, promoting regional stability. And he's our guest today, and we'll be diving into his experience, how one can leverage the military experience for a rewarding career. And I love this, how one can improve their foxhole. Now, before I introduce General Ward, I just want to put a shout out to the segment sponsors, Honest Talk International and Circle for Parents. Both these organizations have a vetted network of experts who are standing by to help all our listeners navigate issues related to nutrition, fitness, parenting, relationships, intimacy. I encourage you guys to visit honestbirthtalk.com and circleforparents.com. General Ward, welcome to the show.
Well, hello, Mike, and thanks very much.
Well, yeah, I'm just so excited to really have you here. Your experience is very rich. I know our listeners will gain from it. You know, I was reading up on your profile. You commissioned in the infantry in 1971. You've got tours that include Korea, Egypt, Somalia, Bosnia, Israel, 2 tours in Germany. Assignments all over the U.S., including in Alaska and Hawaii. And we could talk about those. I spent 14 years up in Alaska. I just, bottom line for me, impressed. Not just because of your successes, though, and I'll be very honest about that, but because you've had your share of adversity, too. And now you tour the country helping others improve their foxhole. So, you know, welcome to the show. Tell me a little bit about, like, you hit 4-star, but then you fell from 4-star. What happened? Tell us what happened. That was kind of your first, maybe that wasn't your first part of adversity, but tell us how you emerged out of that.
Well, that episode happened at the very tail end of my career. I was about to retire. And as I was approaching my retirement, a couple of folks who had worked for me at my last at command said some things not true, but unfortunately, I couldn't disprove. And so at least at that time. And as a result of that, with a lot of things going on in the military, the Secretary of Defense made a decision that I would retire as a lieutenant general and at the very end of my career. But I served honorably as a 4-star combatant commander for 3.5 years. And prior to then, as a 4-star deputy combatant commander at U.S. European Command prior to standing up AFRICOM. So that episode happened at the very tail end of my career as a result of, candidly, a couple of disgruntled folks who knew that some administrative requirements that should have been in place, in fact, that they had some responsibility for ensuring were in place, weren't there. Ultimately, as the commander, my responsibility, but you trust folks to do things. And that was a very big lesson that sometimes trust is not returned. And because of who they were and what they did that didn't happen to them, they saw an opportunity to make some claims that were, although false, because of some lacking administrative requirements, I could not, at that time, say were not the case.
Yeah, isn't that interesting, sir? And I don't mean to interrupt you, but it's, you know, you could live a life honorably, you could do right by others, you've had a very successful career. And even though you create that kind of circle, it doesn't mean adversity and circumstances won't hit you. And I think what was so impressive is, you know, some would look at that as, man, a tremendous, you know, career killer, or boy, how could you, you know, at the tail end of your career of all times. But what I love about your story is you did not allow that to define you. You are still giving back. And you know, I want to talk about that as adversity is going to hit, and it's going to hit those that transition, no matter how successful they were in the military. What did you find from that experience when adversity hit? What was kind of your first initial thoughts?
Well, the first thing was that I'm still who I am. And none of that was my character, integrity, ever compromised. And so therefore, I continue to move and do and be as I had always been, honest, forthright, confident, and those things that were of interest to me were still of interest to me. As I would say, you know, being the best that you can be for your teammates, doing what you can do so that they are elevated, being a good teammate. And so, as I retired after a very uh, good career. I mean, I enjoyed it. 40 years of active duty, and that happened. That didn't change who I was, and because that didn't define me. I'm an individual who was God fearing, and so my faith was strong, and I believed in myself. And the other thing is, that was also there. Friends and family those who knew the truth, and so uh, it was those who don't know and hear what they see either in the social media echo chamber, whatever, who didn't know, but those who were with me and knew, to include so many others that were a part of that whole time. So their faith, their confidence, their trust, their belief, their friendship, their love, all those things are still present. And with that, that's what grounded me to continue to move forward. And I'm very, very happy that I did, because the transition, while certainly what it might have been, wasn't something that I just shunned away from either. And so this age-old thing, you're flexible, we're resilient, and as my favorite philosopher Yogi Berra says, when you come to a fork in the road, you take it. And I took the fork and I moved forward, and that journey was fine too.
How did you not get caught up in reading the negative press clippings? I mean, it was a flash. There was a lot of talk about it. How did you not allow that? And you spoke briefly about this. Having your close circle, right? People that knew the truth, knew who you are. But how did you do it? How did you avoid getting caught up in it? Did you just stop reading the newspapers and watching TV?
I just didn't do it right. I mean, it was pervasive. The good news is it wasn't something that lasted forever. I got tired of it, and then in many respects, it was the story of the day. It passed, and life went on, and I just didn't dwell on it. And so you're right. I just didn't go to those things. And the good news is there was a lot of positive things still going, because I was still doing things. I was still involved, engaged, as I am till today. The things that I do in support of the development of young men, in support of communities, remaining active, and the importance of our international affairs, and so far as stability is concerned, the things that were important to me before remain important. That didn't change. Again, that's how you're grounded. And so when those things occur, uh, you don't let them consume you. You move on to those things that bring satisfaction, that are meaningful, that give purpose, and serve others as well. And that's what I continue to do. One of my favorite sayings, and in addition to improve the Foxhole, is proud to serve, because I think it is something that I'm proud to do. I learned that at a young age from my parents, my dad. And so, serving others is what this is about, and you move on. You don't dwell on the negative. You move forward.
Yeah, I love that, and I think, and you've probably seen this over your career. Uh, as a leader, leaders oftentimes start to read their own press clippings, right? Even when you get into, the 1, 2, 3, 4 star. I mean, that's quite an accomplishment. You're becoming someone. There's expectations around you, who you should be. Some lose sight of their values. You talked about staying grounded. What advice do you have for young men and women, emerging leaders, uh, to do? What do they need to do to stay grounded so they don't get caught up in that press clipping stuff?
From a solid foundation, good home. It's we're all first human beings, and none of us is better than the next person. And for me, it wasn't about being served. It was always about serving others, and it didn't matter. Uh, from my time as a brand new lieutenant, as a platoon leader, how could I cause the guys in my platoon, my infantry platoon, to be better? What was my role in that? And then in the same thing as a captain when I commanded my company, as a lieutenant colonel commanding my battalion, as a colonel commanding my brigade, as an assistant division commander, as a division commander. as a NATO commander and clearly as a combatant commander. It's all about how can what I do help my teammates be more successful at what they do, because each person makes a difference with respect to the completion, success of the mission. And that was the same methodology that I brought to my post-military career as well. How my being there was all about causing my teammates to be more successful and better at what they did. So, and when I approach it that way, and that's what I would tell my folks, if each of us is working for the support of everyone else, then the entire team is elevated. We're all elevated. And so for me, it was never about Kip Ward. It was about how Kip Ward can help the team be better in getting its mission done, as well as taking care of the folks who are part of it. So how I take care of my people, I did my best to ensure that that was happening in ways that they knew it. And that's the same advice I give young leaders as I would my junior leaders. It's about how you take care of your folks in ways that they know it. And thankfully, and with the obviously with the blessings that I've received, that's how I served my entire career, and that's really how I'm defined. These other things not there, and again, those who know me know that. And I'm just so thankful that that's how it was, and for me, that's how it's been maintained.
And but is that like part of your DNA? Because I know that, like you say that, like you kept a level set, despite your successes. I mean, or because of your successes, maybe, in spite of or because of. But I'm sure you've seen it in other leaders where that same principle doesn't stand. So what would you say is the differentiator? Is it because of your faith? Is it because you're grounded? Is it because it was ingrained? Do you see a differentiator between how you execute and how some other leaders execute? Is there one thing that they do? Maybe not. But from your perspective, what do you see?
I think, fortunately, the good news is most leaders approach leading and being a part of a team, I think, in pretty consistent terms, and that is how do you do the best to take care of your people and do what's best for them, and it's not about you. And it is certainly my I get a lot of that from my parents. Obviously, that was how I was raised to take care of your fellow human being, treat people as you would like to be treated. So that's there. Certainly, my faith is also a part of it. That I maintain a strong faith that we're all made in the image of the Maker, and that means with none of us is better than anyone else. We all have, and each of us have a position that, regardless of what we do, that's important. That's important. I can recall when I commanded the U.S. Army Hawaii, when I commanded the 25th Infantry Division, and I had all those installation pieces, and I would go into my facilities and custodians. I would seek custodians out because I know, the custodians, the job of from be it one of the recreational facilities or one of the clubs. Go in there and you go into a latrine or restroom, bathroom, and the place is clean and it's kept. I appreciated that, and I wanted the person that was responsible for it to know that I appreciated what he or she was doing with respect to that. That was very important to the morale of that facility, that location. And when you go into a place when that's not the case, you can tell the difference. And so it wasn't that the comptroller or the auditor or the manager, that custodian, that cook was just as an important part of the overall success of that organization as anyone else. And that's something that, again, my entire life has been a part of it. So I think it's all those things are part of the makeup of the individual that causes her or him to act in such a way. I'm just thankful that for me, it was something that I had instilled in me from watching the example of my dad, obviously my mom, grandparents, and then how they lived and what they did, and how they treated people. The golden rule kind of works most, if not all the time. You just treat people the way you want to be treated, and the rest of it is kind of works.
Yeah, I love that. That was something I was asked not too long ago, like, what is the secret to your success? Which I always thought was a pretty interesting question because people measure success differently, right? And I kind of follow that same principle, and that's what I love about your story is, the secret really is I treat everybody as they should be treated. I mean, that's really the secret, right? It's, I treat them like they matter because they do matter. It doesn't, your position in life, is your position in life, but it doesn't exclude you from being treated like a fellow human being and a brother or sister.
The key word, dignity and respect applies to each individual. That's not about your station in life. It's dignity and respect, whatever you are, wherever you do, and when you treat people so that they know from how you treat them that you matter, that you mean something, they care. It goes a long way.
Gosh, it so does, man. I think it moves mountains. That's one of the things we talk about on this show often is that whole uh, adage, one team, one fight, and we tend to keep politics out of the discussion, just because that's a whole different discussion, whole different show for that matter. But you discuss topics related to good governance and creating a civil society, which I think is so important. And I think many would agree it's probably a much needed discussion, especially now. And I think oftentimes we have the problems we do because maybe we don't talk about it enough. Where we're learning to stay in the room with difference and actually learning to listen to others as opposed to listening to argue. Um, in your experience, and this is part of your talk, what do you see as the key to good governance in civil society, both professionally and personally?
Yeah, it's candidly, it's I won't say it's simple, but it's not complex. It's hard to bring into action to be sure, but the concept is simple. Are you doing things that would cause those who you serve? In the case of a government, it could be at the federal, state, local level. But those who you serve, are you doing things that will ultimately be a benefit to them? Uh, and are you doing it in a transparent way? Are you doing it in a way that that causes accountability to be able to be measured and results to be measured, such that actions that are taken result in tangible benefits to the population in transparent and equitable ways, without doing things that are corrupt, or otherwise untoward, uh, doing it appropriately, maintaining your integrity, being honest, being truthful, and when you do that, you are governing in a way that makes sense. But you mentioned this the point about listening. You've got to understand who you're serving, and so this is, I talk about improving the foxhole. I also talk about getting out of the foxhole, because you cannot always approach things from your perspective. You also have to approach things from the perspective of others. I mean, our way of doing things, or our viewpoint with respect to how life is or is not, there are many, many aspects to that. When I was the commander of Africa Command, even when I was the deputy commander of U.S. European Command, going to a different part of the area of responsibility, uh, it was the people had different history, different language, different culture, different mores, and their approach to life was different. So you couldn't always come in and just lay down your thought and say, now do it my way or the highway. You had to understand the perspective, the point of view of those with whom you're serving as well. And so for those who would seek to govern, it's about, in that regard, it's also about being attentive to your constituencies.
Man, I think this would work in personal relationships, like in marriages too, right? Like you got to pay attention to your constituent, your spouse. How do they respond? How do they act? How do they? Yeah, I think that's good. I want to jump into this, and I want to be tentative to time because and I'd love to have you back on the show too. But you have this talk called "Improving Your Foxhole." What will people learn from that talk? And I'm encouraging people to look you up, uh, General William Kip Ward, and improving the foxhole. It's a great talk. But what are the like one or two primary things people would learn from this talk?
Well, the first thing is, wherever you are, whatever position you're in, that's your foxhole. And for me, that's saying started when I was a platoon leader. And I got that from my platoon sergeant. We were out on the field exercise. And in the old days, we literally dug foxholes, and you got down in the foxhole, and the foxhole was used to protect you. And as long as you are occupying it, since this thing might have to save my life one day, I want to make it better. I want to keep making this foxhole better. I want to improve this foxhole. And I kind of took that as a way of approaching my work from then on. And it didn't matter what the foxhole was during my time at, in a unit where I was physically digging a foxhole as an infantryman, to my jobs in the Pentagon and elsewhere. That job that I had, that position, that assignment, that was my foxhole. And you work every day to make it better. You do something every day to cause that foxhole to be better. And when you do that, at the conclusion of that time of occupying it, you look back and say, "Yep, I left this foxhole better than I found it." And that's what we all want to do. So you work consistently each day to improve the foxhole, to make the position that you're in, the responsibility that you have, the job that you have, a little bit better each and every day. Sometimes it happens in leaps and bounds. Sometimes it may be low crawl pace to see some results. But as long as you're working at it every day to make that foxhole better, then you're doing good, and you're making a difference, and you're causing the team to perform in a more effective way.
I love that. So, what is, as we wrap this thing up, what is the one piece of advice you would give to those who are transitioning when it comes to finding a new sense of mission and purpose? I know this is an area that oftentimes people struggle with when they get out. Purpose was defined, mission was often defined, and then they get out and they've got to find new mission and purpose. What's that one piece of advice you would give those who are getting ready to transition?
I think that the succinct thing that I would say is all the sets of skills and tools that any transitioning service member would need to be successful in a post-military life, they possess. And it comes with the basic things that they have done throughout their military career. Being responsible, being disciplined, being task-oriented, being a part of a team such that your actions impact those of your teammates as well, and you take that into account when you move forward. Those same attributes are applicable in the civilian society as well. And candidly, civilian industry look for folks like that because they know that the military member who comes into their private civilian enterprise has those things that she or he has already demonstrated that they can do because of having had a successful military career. And so I think the thing that I would say, go forward confident, knowing that, this is something new to me, but the tools that I need to be successful, I possess because I've already demonstrated the ability to do it. And you go forward with confidence, not with huge egos or hubris or nothing like that, but confident, knowing that, hey, I can do this because I have already done this. And I think that is the foundational framework that's helpful in whatever career endeavor. It's skill sets. Some folks come with some very defined skill sets, and that's great. But even without the defined skill set, that you can also learn things. You bring that basic understanding of who you are, confident, disciplined, you're responsible. If you say you're going to do something, you do it. You show up on time because we've done that all along. Those are the things that are in high demand in the civilian society after you transition, and you take that, and those are your bona fides for success.
I love it. Thank you, General, for that. You're such a wealth of information, and I'm encouraging people to look you up and find you. How do people find you? Where can they find you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay, good. And your handle on LinkedIn is it General William Ward? Is it General Kip Ward? Is it what? How do they find you?
General William Kip Ward.
Got it. Okay, good. And your talk is great. I encourage people that if they're looking for a great speaker, I think you would. And you're still speaking on stages, correct?
I am. This past month, 3 or 4. Most recently with the American Legion, their national convention here in Washington D.C. But I am still speaking.
That's great. Well, General, I appreciate you being a guest on this show. It's such a great guest, and thank you for being on the show.
Mike, my pleasure. Thank you, and thanks for what you do in serving our service members through this forum. They remain our greatest treasure, sons and daughters of America, and I'm just privileged and proud to have had the opportunity to have served alongside so many of them for my career, and just so happy that as I even go through an airport today and someone comes up to me and says, "Hey, sir, remember me? I'm so and so and so and so." Just want to thank you for your service, like what you did, and for me, that's some of my greatest reward, knowing that I serve with folks who thought that my being with them made a difference in their life and their abilities as well, because they sure did it for me.
I love it. Well, thank you again, sir.
My pleasure. Take care.